Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of a random movie that I decided to grab and watch recently. And before I get into the review, I'm just going to have a little disclaimer. If you hear any kind of noise in the background, I got a fan on, it's hot in here. My AC has been broken for a while, so bear with me. I'm not going to sit here and roast because then it doesn't make a good video because it's not a lot of fun for people to watch me melt in front of the camera. But also, that kind of ties into this movie. We Are Still Here. The ghosts in this, their method of killing is to burn people to death or to just, kill them in various different gory ways. But honestly, their touch will literally burn you to a crisp. So, this is a film that I'd heard a lot of good things about from different other horror publications and all other sort of stuff like that. You can see all the good reviews on here. Will Keep Your Knuckles Tightened by Entertainment Weekly. Intensely Creepy by Ain't It Cool News. The first incredibly scary and pure horror film of the year by Dread Central. Masterfully crafted creeper that knows when to ratchet up the tension. Bloody disgusting. So I was like, oh, okay, this is supposed to be a pretty good one. And I checked it out, and I was a little bit let down by it. I liked the movie. I thought it was worth a watch. I'm glad to have it in my collection. But I do not see We Are Still Here as a 95% out of 100 type movie. It did not tighten my knuckles at all. It wasn't intensely creepy. It wasn't that scary. It wasn't a masterfully crafted creeper that knew how to ratchet up the tension. One of the things I had an issue with is that it didn't have much tension. There wasn't a lot of suspense here. It was a lot of splatter, gore, and ghosts. That's honestly sums up the film rather well. I liked it. The gore, when it was there, was practical, and I definitely did enjoy that and appreciated that. And it had some good performances by some of the cast members, and I felt the director and the crew, they did a great job with a low budget. But overall, I was a little bit, I was let down by this film. It was not a movie that I thought was really that compelling, let alone a film that really resonated with me that much. I did find it entertaining though, and I did find it worth a watch. It's one of those films that there are good things about it, but there are flaws that hold it back from true cult status for me, or classic status. It's directed by Ted Geoghegan. I don't know how to say his last name. Geoghegan. Sound like I'm doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Ted Geoghegan. So Ted Geoghegan. I'm just gonna call him Teddy. I'm gonna call him Ted. Okay, all right. So Ted directed this. I thought he did a good job. That's one of the aspects of the film I thought was quite impressive and was definitely something worth of note. Is the direction. Did a good job using his locations and using the low budget and working with the effects and his actors. So it wasn't like this is a director who was a total novice or didn't know what they were doing or was an amateur or was just awful. It wasn't anything like that. It didn't look like a shot on shitty movie or anything with some guy who didn't know how to hold the camera properly. So it was a solid directing effort by Ted. It's also written by Ted, and it stars Barbara Crampton, who you might recognize from other horror films, and she plays Anne Sacchetti. You have Andrew Sessing, who plays Paul Sacchetti. These are honestly, the two main characters who move into this house, and they're the ones that have to deal with the horrors that are within. Larry Fessenden, who you might recognize if you're a fan of low budget indie horror films. He is a well-known director in that field, and he plays a character named Jacob. I actually had a lot of fun with his character. I just wish that he had more to do. But I had fun with his character because I liked his personality and his charisma. It reminded me of some of the characters that I would see in some of the '80s slashers. So I definitely did enjoy his performance. You have Lisa Marie. She plays Mae Lewis. Interesting about Lisa Marie, I actually did a horror con in Portland, Oregon, and she was one of the guests. So actually, uh, I do remember actually meeting her briefly, and but nothing really extensive or anything. But it's one of those things that I volunteered at the con, so I was able to get access to the con and check things out, and she was there. Um, a good friend of mine, she knows a lot more about Lisa Marie because she actually was her celebrity handler. Monte Markham as Dave McCabe, Susan Gibney as Maddie, Michael Patrick as Harry, and Kelsey Dakota as Daniela. And then there's a few other actors and actresses, but they don't really have that big of roles, unless I want to count Guy Gain III, who plays Dagmar, and Alessa Dowling, who plays Alois, and Zora Burress, who plays Fiona. And those are all the characters that are the ghosts that are still there inside of the house. Features music by Wojciech Golczewski. The score is fine, but it's nothing particularly memorable, but it adds some nice dread and atmosphere to the film. The cinematography by Karim Hussein, a lot of it's just kind of stock cinematography. There's really nothing about the cinematography that's really that impressive. To be honest, I would say that this cover has more color than the film does. So it's a little bit, it would have been nice to see that kind of color scheme or that kind of lighting used in the film, but it really isn't. It's pretty stock cinematography. The editing by Aaron Crozier and Josh Ether, it's there. It's decent. It's decent enough. It's nothing spectacular, but it's nothing particularly egregious either. Has a running time of about 84 minutes, and that's just right, because if the film was any longer, I probably would not even be a fan of it at all, because the film has some pacing issues. And the reason is, when there isn't any sort of ghostly goings on, when there isn't the Dagmar family getting bloody revenge on people or attacking people in the basement, or the cellar, actually, it's not the basement, but it might as well be a basement. It's kind of slow going. It really is. It spends a while trying to introduce these other characters, but then these other characters don't really amount to much. There's two characters in particular that just end up becoming additions to the body count and nothing else other than that. And when it comes to the characters, that's one of the film's most crippling flaws for me. That's the main thing that prevents this movie from being a true classic and from being a film that really stuck with me, like it did with a lot of the other critics and a lot of other people that saw it. Is precisely that. The performances are fine. Barbara Crampton is excellent, and Andrew Sessing I liked, and I liked Larry Fessenden, and Lisa Marie was fine. The thing is, though, the writing with these characters didn't really give them a lot to their character that really made them characters that you learned to love or like or really got to know that much about. You just kind of get this whole gist that Barbara Crampton's character is dealing with the grief of the loss of her son, and that's really all that's there with her character. There's not much to her character other than that. The same that her husband is just her loving husband, and there's not much personality or character to him. He's pretty bland. Larry Fessenden is the most alive character out of all of them. Like he's the character that has the most potential, but he's not used that much except for maybe comic relief and for a vessel for a demonic possession later. Lisa Marie, she does fine, but she's just a psychic. That's really all her role is. So you have these characters that are stock generic characters, but there's no unique charisma, personality that really makes these characters stand apart from the rest. And that's one of the things I've noticed with a lot of recent horror films is that, and even films that I like It Follows, you have characters that don't really leave that much of a lasting impression on you. They're not characters you learn to love or you love to hate. They're just there. They're just characters. They're just cogs in the machine. And I definitely felt that way about this film. Um, I'm trying to figure out like who some of these actors are again. Like there's this one guy. He's like it's some evil. He's basically the villain of the piece. I think it was Michael Patrick. I think that's who it was. I could be wrong. I think that's who it was. Yeah, no, actually it was Monte Markham. That's who it was. Monte Markham. Monte Markham plays who is essentially the main villain of the piece, a guy named Dave McCabe, and he's this corrupt old guy who basically wants this new family that moved into the house to expire so he can satisfy the ghost's bloodlust. He's in a lot of ways he's just the same character that's played by Hal Holbrook in The Fog. He's has this his family has this history, and he's trying to do whatever he can to keep the ghosts satisfied, and then ultimately the ghosts have enough of his shit and get revenge and take him out. There is a lot of similarities between this and The Fog. Both films deal with revenge ghosts, and both films have similar elements. But unlike The Fog, this film relies a lot on splatter and gore. And I like the gore and I like the splatter, but for me, it doesn't really mesh with the tone, especially not with the tone in the first 20 minutes or so. It's played rather straight, it's played rather seriously, other than some kind, some jokey kind of stuff from Larry Fessenden's character. There really isn't a lot of jokes or a lot of gags or a lot of tongue-in-cheek moments. So when you get to the splatter, it kind of does it comes out of left field, and it doesn't necessarily mesh with the rest of the movie. It's one of those things. It's like the first half of the film is trying almost to be like The Changeling. There's even a scene where a ball bounces down the stairs. So clearly these writers were inspired and really liked The Changeling, and that was their homage to it. And I like that touch. And I liked the stuff in the beginning where just doors were slamming and things were turning on randomly and stuff like that. And you'd see a little bit of the ghosts and they ran in the background and stuff like that. There's a really intense scene where Barbara Crampton goes into the cellar and she's looking around, and then you actually see the silhouette of one of the ghosts behind her and she doesn't know it. I love shots like that, and I love moments like that in this type of horror film. But then it completely does away with the mystique and the mystery, and then it just gives you this just smorgasbord of scenes with these ghosts, and they end up losing all of their luster. They're no longer scary, they're no longer creepy. They just become vessels for splatter, vessels for blood and guts. That's really all they are. So they essentially just become slasher characters. They become the slashers who go after the people who are going to get killed in ingenious various different ways. And the effects are cool, and I mean, I did have fun with the finale when the ghosts are dragging people through the floor and fucking people up right and left. That was cool, but at the same time, I wish that was a part of a different movie, or that type of tone was consistent throughout the film. You don't have this serious old school haunted house vibe, and then all of a sudden it's a over the top splatter movie. It just doesn't really, those two elements don't combine together very well. The Fog works as well as it does because it isn't that bloody or gory. And it does not show you that many scenes of the pirates. They're shrouded in fog throughout most of the movie. So the ghost pirates are so much more effective that way. And when Blake shows up at the end and decapitates Hal Holbrook, it's a really chilling, memorable scene. Here, you just, for the first time, they show you the ghosts very briefly and in the shadows, and then they show up, and then they kill this carpenter guy, or actually it's an electrician. They kill this electrician rather gorily, and then they do the same with this other couple that come to stay at the house, and then after that, it's just a crazy gore fest. And the ending, I hated. What the hell was that? It was this whole thing where, okay, I get it. The Dave guy is wondering why the ghosts haven't killed killed Barbara Crampton and her husband yet, and he's trying to get the ghosts to kill them so they can be satisfied or something. And then the ghosts just decide to kill everybody in the house, and including a bunch of townspeople who come in and try to take out Barbara Crampton and her husband. I guess because I have no idea. It doesn't really explain why the townspeople are wanting to kill them. It's like one of those things that's like, oh, I guess 2 bodies is enough to satisfy their bloodlust or something. Like, these things are killing, like, everybody that's in the house. Anything that moves. Like, they didn't kill the other people. And there's this whole thing where the evil bad guy, Dave, he's all like, why haven't they killed them yet? I don't know. And then there's this thing that maybe Barbara Crampton and her husband's son, his spirit is in the house, and but it was earlier insinuated that might have been just not the case, like that was just in Barbara Crampton's character's head. And then you have the ending where the ghosts, they get their revenge, they kill Dave. They basically kill half the town. There's blood all over the place, all over the walls, all over the stairs. It's a bloodbath. The Barbara Crampton, her character Annie, and her husband Paul, they go into the cellar, I guess, because after the blood stops spraying, the ghosts actually fade away after they kill Dave. And then Paul and Anne, they apparently hear their son's voice, and then they go to the cellar, and the last shot is of Paul just standing in front of the cellar door that's wide open and just smiling and saying, "Hi, son." And then that's the end of the movie. And then there's like the credits, and there's like these Photoshop newspaper articles gives you more backstory on the house, which honestly I wish there was more of that in the movie itself, not just in these newspaper articles. In fact, the newspaper articles I kind of had a more interesting plot and story than what we got in the movie. But yeah, it's one of those things that's like, what the fuck was that ending? Like, the Dave guy was trying to manipulate Barbara Crampton to go into the cellar and sacrifice herself to the darkness, and I guess she's gonna do that anyway because she hears her son's voice. Is this Dagmar and his family just imitating her son's voice, or is it actually her son that's in the cellar who's in the house? I don't, have they been dead the whole time? That's not true, because why would Dave and the whole town want to kill them? So it's one of those things that's like, what the hell was that? So that kind of thing definitely hurts the film. I mean, the ending, that just doesn't make any sense to me. The pacing, which suffers because you have a lack of suspense, because the characters don't really have a lot for you to latch onto, which makes it hard for you to really care about what happens, except for the occasional bits of blood and gore when the ghosts come in and attack. And yeah, so it's not what I would call a great film or a classic film. If you feel that way, to each their own. We agree to disagree, and I have no issue with anyone that likes this movie or thinks it's a new genre classic or something. But I just felt it left quite a bit to be desired. But at the same time, despite my issues with it, I still liked the film. I liked it as a time waster. I liked it as a movie that I thought was enjoyable enough for different elements, like Barbara Crampton's performance and a few of the other supporting actors and their performances. The mood and atmosphere at times was efficiently creepy. It just didn't stay that way, sadly. And I did like the gore when it was there. It was practical, and I thought it was creative, and I enjoyed it. But it's one of those things where it's like I like it, but kind of don't. It's like one of those like love and hate things. I love it, but then I kind of hate it because it doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of the movie. It doesn't really fit with the film as a whole, and kind of cheapens or definitely deadens the effectiveness of the chills that were established in the first 20 minutes or so. So, yeah, I really don't know what else to say about We Are Still Here, except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, 3 out of 5. Typical, average, so-so, in the middle horror movie. One of the better films I've seen from a direct-to-video, when it comes to a direct-to-video standpoint. It's not a total pile of garbage or trash or anything, but it could have been so much more, and it just wasn't. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I can't lie and say that I thought this was some new horror masterpiece, or it was particularly that frightening, or scary, or thrilling. It really wasn't. It was entertaining. It was entertaining enough, and definitely a time waster, and I wouldn't mind. I'm definitely not disappointed in owning this. I didn't pay that much for it to begin with. So it's not like, I think I paid like $3 or $4 for this Blu-ray. So it's not like I splurged on it. And it was worth a watch for the effects and for some of the atmosphere and mood and the acting. And I like the general idea. It's just, I guess for me personally, I just would have liked to have seen a more traditional old school haunted house approach and leave the gore for something like Dead Alive or some other type of splatterfest. Or if you're going to have that kind of thing, then have the film be tongue-in-cheek from the beginning and just kind of some kind of over-the-top haunted house gore fest. And if it did that, then I could honestly look at it as a classic because it wasn't trying that hard to be scary to begin with. It was just like, hey, we're just being an over-the-top fun movie like Evil Dead 2. But that's not the case here. So anyway, I'd recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. You like the trailer, but if it doesn't sound that interesting to you, or you're not really a fan of the trailer or what you see, you could definitely skip it because it's one of those films that I think is going to disappoint some people. Because they're going to go into it expecting it to be some amazing, just thrilling, scary movie because of all the reviews. And then they'll see it and they'll be like, okay, I didn't really see that, but all right. But anyway, I've talked your ear off enough, and I hope you all enjoyed the review. And as always, I will see you later. See ya.